After losing everything, an elderly woman moves into her son's house in a luxurious mansion. There she is met with cold smiles, subtle rules, and a strange sense of exclusion. Soon she realizes she is being manipulated, medicated, and gradually silenced. Now she needs to prove she is lucid before they make her disappear completely. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. The afternoon was gently falling over Kensington Gardens, an affluent district of London, when the taxi stopped before an imposing wrought-iron gate. Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, a 68-year-old woman with white hair tied in a simple bun and wearing a floral cotton dress, looked out the window with a mixture of admiration and discomfort. The mansion that rose before her, with its marble walls and meticulously cared-for gardens, seemed to have come from another world, a world very distant from the small city of Canterbury in the county of Kent, from where she had come. "Is this the right place, Mum?" the taxi driver asked, checking the address on his app. "Yes, my son lives here," Eleanor replied, clutching a time-faded crochet bag to her chest, her only luggage apart from a small suitcase. The intercom was activated, and a female voice, polite yet cold, authorized entry. The taxi drove down the long driveway lined with impressive oak trees until it stopped before the main entrance, where a young woman was waiting. Tall, slender, with long black hair and an impeccable white dress that highlighted her perfect tan, Valerie Monroe smiled with her lips, but her eyes remained vigilant. "Mrs. Hayes, welcome. We finally get to meet Liam's mother," she said, extending a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "I'm Valerie, your son's fiancée. He's in an important meeting, but he should be back for dinner." Eleanor nodded, trying to hide the fatigue from the long journey. "Thank you, my dear. It's a very beautiful house." "Oh, this is just the beginning. Come, I'll show you to your room." As she followed Valerie through the corridors, decorated with works of art and furniture that cost more than everything she had ever owned in her life, Eleanor felt a pang of nostalgia. It had been almost 5 years since she had seen her only son. Since Liam had moved to London to work for a major property developer and quickly risen to executive director, their meetings had been limited to rare phone calls and messages on special occasions. The decision to come and live with him had been made after her small house in Canterbury had been hit by a landslide, leaving her with no alternatives. "This will be your room," Valerie announced, opening a door at the end of the east corridor, far from the master suite. "I hope you'll be comfortable. The bathroom is there and that door leads to a small balcony. I've prepared some new clothes in the closet, as I imagine you didn't bring much." The room, though luxurious with its king-size bed and pastel-toned decor, was positioned in the most isolated area of the mansion. Eleanor noticed the detail but merely thanked her with a timid smile. "I'll leave you to rest. Dinner will be at 7. Rita, our housekeeper, will come to fetch you. Oh, and the mobile signal doesn't work very well in this wing. Something about the house's structure. But there's a telephone on the bedside table for emergencies." As soon as Valerie closed the door, Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, feeling small in the spacious environment. She opened her crochet bag and pulled out an old photo frame. In it, a middle-aged man smiled beside a boy of about 10, Sebastian, her late husband, and Liam, the son she now barely recognized. "Oh, Sebastian, did we do the right thing sending the boy to study in the capital? Look where he ended up, so far from us." 2 hours later, when Rita, a dark-haired woman with kind eyes, came to call her for dinner, Eleanor had already bathed and put on her best outfit, a navy blue skirt and a white blouse with embroidered details that she had sewn 2 years earlier. The dining room was immense, with a table that could easily seat 20 people. Valerie was already seated, distractedly scrolling on her phone. When Eleanor entered, she briefly looked up and indicated a seat far from her own. "Sit wherever you prefer, Mrs. Hayes. Liam just informed me he won't be able to join us for dinner. An unforeseen issue with foreign investors." The disappointment on Eleanor's face was visible, but she merely nodded and sat down. The staff began to serve sophisticated dishes that she barely recognized. "I hope you like foie gras and salmon carpaccio," Valerie commented, observing the elderly woman's hesitation. "If you prefer something more simple, I can ask the cook." "It's all wonderful, thank you," Eleanor replied, sensing the condescending tone in her future daughter-in-law's words. Dinner proceeded with few words exchanged. Eleanor noticed how Valerie discreetly studied her as if evaluating a potential threat. When dessert was served, an elaborate chocolate construction with edible gold, Valerie finally initiated a longer conversation. "So, Mrs. Hayes, Liam told me so little about his childhood. What was he like when he was little?" Liam was always an intelligent and determined boy. From an early age, he showed interest in construction. His father was a bricklayer, you know. I think that's where his taste for engineering comes from. Valerie raised her perfectly sculpted eyebrows. "A bricklayer? Liam never mentioned that. My husband Sebastian was a hard-working man. He built our house with his own hands. Liam admired him very much." A cold smile formed on Valerie's lips. "Interesting how he evolved, isn't it? Today, he's the CEO of the third largest property developer in the UK. Our engagement party next week will have politicians, businessmen, even celebrities." Eleanor perceived the subliminal message. Her son had left his humble origins behind, and she represented an inconvenient past. After dinner, Valerie offered tea. "It's a special blend I drink every night. It helps to relax." When Rita brought the tray with 2 Chinese porcelain cups, Eleanor noticed something strange. The liquid in her cup had a slightly different hue, and taking a small sip, she felt a bitter taste that the honey could not completely disguise. At the bottom of the cup, an almost imperceptible white residue accumulated. "Don't you like the tea?" Valerie asked with feigned concern. "It's different. I'm not used to such elaborate teas." "It's a family recipe. My grandmother used to say it works wonders for one's health, especially for older people." Eleanor drank only half, claiming that the fatigue of the journey had left her without appetite. When she stood up to return to her room, she felt a slight dizziness. She attributed it to tiredness, but a disquiet began to form within her. Back in her room, she sat on the balcony and watched the moon illuminate the luxurious gardens. The mansion, despite its beauty, had something oppressive about it, as if its walls guarded secrets. Eleanor again took the photo frame from her bag and whispered, "Sebastian, there's something wrong in this house. I feel unwelcome, but our boy is here, and I think he needs me even without knowing it." Meanwhile, in the study on the other side of the mansion, Valerie dialed a number on her private phone. "Dr. Maxwell." "Yes, she arrived today. I'll need that prescription we discussed." "Yes, that one. Don't worry, no one will find out. After all, who will believe a confused old woman against the word of a respected doctor and the fiancé of one of London's most influential businessmen?" The smile that formed on her face was of a cruel beauty as her gaze fell upon a photograph of Liam on her desk. A 40-year-old man, handsome and confident, with a very expensive watch on his wrist, and no idea what awaited him. A week passed since Eleanor's arrival at the mansion. Every morning she woke up early out of habit, but rarely found her son, who left even earlier for meetings. Valerie, in turn, seemed to be always present, like a vigilant shadow. On that specific morning, Eleanor was rummaging through her small jewelry box when she noticed that something important had disappeared. The gold locket Sebastian had given her on their wedding day, almost 50 years ago. "Rita, have you seen my locket?" "The golden one with a picture of my husband?" she asked the housekeeper, who was tidying the room. "No, Mrs. Hayes. Are you sure you brought it on the trip?" "Absolutely. I never take it off my neck, except to sleep. I left it in the box last night." Rita seemed genuinely concerned. "I'll ask the other staff, but no one touches residents' personal belongings without permission." After a fruitless search, Eleanor decided to speak with Valerie, who was having coffee on the main balcony, checking messages on her tablet. "Valerie, dear, forgive me for interrupting, but I've lost a locket that's very important to me." The young woman looked up, impassive. "A locket? What does it look like?" "It's gold, with Sebastian's picture inside. It has enormous sentimental value." Valerie frowned, placing the tablet on the table. "Mrs. Hayes, are you sure you're not getting things confused? Liam told me you've been a bit forgetful lately." "Forgetful? No. I'm sure the locket was with me. I only wear that and my wedding ring as jewelry." A complacent smile formed on Valerie's lips. "I understand. Well, sometimes our memory plays tricks on us as we get older. My grandmother started hiding things and then forgot where she'd put them." Those words hit Eleanor like a blow. She had never had memory problems, and Liam had never mentioned such a concern in the few conversations they had. Before she could protest, she heard her son's voice. "Mother, I finally got a break so we can have coffee together." Liam Hayes entered the balcony, a tall man with features reminiscent of his father, but wearing an impeccable Italian suit and with an air of confidence that Sebastian had never had. He kissed his mother on the forehead and then Valerie's lips, who immediately adopted an expression of sweetness that Eleanor had never seen directed at herself. "Liam, your mother was saying she lost a locket, but I was explaining that it might just be a lapse of memory, like that time with the glasses you told me about." Liam looked at his mother with concern. Father's locket. "Mother, you also forgot where you put your glasses in Canterbury. They were in the freezer, remember?" "That never happened, son," Eleanor protested, feeling a chill run down her spine. "I would never put my glasses in the freezer." A quick exchange of glances between Liam and Valerie did not go unnoticed. He sighed and placed his hand over hers. "It's all right, Mother. We'll look for the locket calmly. Now, let's have coffee. I have a meeting in an hour." During breakfast, Valerie dominated the conversation, talking about the preparations for the engagement party and the important guests. Eleanor barely touched her food, disturbed not only by the disappearance of the locket, but by the unsettling feeling that something very strange was happening. "By the way, Liam," Valerie said between sips of coffee, "Dr. Maxwell stopped by yesterday. He brought those vitamins I mentioned for your mother. He said they'll help her adapt to the change." "What doctor is that?" "I haven't seen any doctor," Eleanor protested. Liam smiled condescendingly. "Mother, he's the family doctor. Valerie made an appointment for you the day after you arrived while you were resting. Don't you remember?" The sensation of losing control over her own reality made Eleanor choke on her coffee. There had been no appointment, she was sure of it. She had spent the second day entirely in her room in the garden, waiting for her son who hadn't appeared. After coffee, Liam said goodbye with a hurried kiss and left for another day of work. Valerie accompanied him to the car and returned with a satisfied smile. "Mrs. Hayes, I almost forgot to give you your vitamins," she said, handing her a bottle of white capsules. "The doctor recommended taking one in the morning and one at night, always with meals." Eleanor looked at the unlabeled bottle with suspicion. "What vitamins are these?" "A special complex for elderly people. It helps with memory, energy. Dr. Maxwell is a geriatric specialist, you know. Liam and I only want the best for you." Reluctantly, Eleanor accepted the bottle, but decided not to take anything for now. Years of working as a nursing assistant in Canterbury had taught her never to accept unlabeled medication or unclear prescriptions. That afternoon, while organizing her few clothes in the immense closet, Eleanor heard a knock at the door. It was Rita, the housekeeper, with a distressed look. "Mrs. Hayes, I found something strange in Valerie's room," she whispered, looking around as if fearing to be overheard. "I thought you should know." With trembling fingers, Rita handed her a folded paper. It was a list of medications, with handwritten notes about dosages and effects. Eleanor recognized some names: psychotropics, Alzheimer's medications, and other substances used in psychiatric treatments. "Where did you find this, Rita?" "It fell out of her planner while I was cleaning. Your name is written there in the corner, see?" Indeed, at the top of the page was written E.H. Plan, here's her initials. "Mrs. Hayes, I've worked for wealthy families for 30 years. I've seen a lot of bad things, but I never like to get involved. However, you remind me of my mother and—" Rita hesitated, looking at the door again. "I'm afraid of what that young lady is planning. She's not what she seems." "Thank you, Rita. I'll be careful." After the housekeeper left, Eleanor put the paper under the lining of her crochet bag. Her mind, perfectly lucid despite Valerie's insinuations, began to connect the dots. The bitter tea, the missing locket, the unidentified vitamins, the false claims about medical consultations. That night, when Valerie came to her room to offer more tea, Eleanor pretended to accept it gratefully, but poured the liquid onto the plant beside the bed when she was alone. She did the same with the vitamin capsule, wrapping it in a small piece of paper. Around 11, when the house was silent, Eleanor crept out of her room. She needed to find more evidence and, most importantly, her locket. She walked carefully through the dark corridors, using only the faint moonlight filtering through the windows to guide her. As she passed the master bedroom, she heard voices. The door was ajar, and against all her principles of privacy, She approached to listen. "Just a matter of time," Valerie was saying. "In a few weeks she'll be completely confused, and then we'll suggest a specialized clinic. I know a discreet place in the Surrey Hills." "I don't know, Valerie. She's my mother." Liam's voice sounded hesitant. "Darling, you've seen how forgetful she is. It's for her own good. Besides, think of our image. A CEO can't have a mother. Well, you know. What would your partners say? What would the press comment? Son abandons sick mother, or CEO keeps incapacitated elderly woman at home. Any option would be disastrous." There was a long silence, followed by the sound of a glass being placed on wood. "You're right, as always," Liam said, his voice strangely monotonous. "What would I do without you to guide me?" "Exactly, my love. Now drink your tea and let's go to sleep. Tomorrow we have that meeting with the Arab investors." Eleanor recoiled, feeling her heart tighten. It wasn't just her freedom at stake. It was her son's soul. Something was wrong with Liam. That submissive voice didn't belong to the determined boy she had raised. And what was in that tea that Valerie insisted on serving to both of them? Back in her room, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She knew she was in danger, but fleeing wasn't an option. She couldn't abandon her son to that manipulative woman. She needed help. But who would believe an elderly woman against the powerful fiancé of a businessman? It was then that she remembered Carmen, her old colleague from the hospital in Canterbury, who now lived retired in London. Carmen had worked for decades as a pharmacist and knew the effects of medications well. Perhaps she could identify the mysterious vitamins. With that thought, Eleanor finally fell asleep, determined to begin her own investigation the next morning. What she didn't expect was to wake up and find on her dressing table the locket that had disappeared. "I found your locket in the garden near the rose bed," Valerie announced, standing at the door with a serene smile. "It must have fallen during your walk yesterday." Eleanor held the locket with trembling hands. It was impossible for it to have fallen in the garden. She hadn't even gone near the roses. She looked at Valerie, whose eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction, and understood. It wasn't just about getting rid of an inconvenient mother-in-law. It was a much crueler psychological game. The public telephone in the Kensington Gardens Square seemed like an object from another time amidst the city's modernity. Eleanor looked nervously around as she dialed Carmen's number, her old colleague from the Canterbury Hospital. She had managed to leave the mansion that morning, claiming she wanted to get to know the neighborhood, and Valerie, perhaps overly confident in her plan, had allowed Rita to accompany her on a short walk. "Carmen, it's Eleanor from Canterbury," she said when a familiar voice answered. "I need your help, but I can't say much. Can I meet you today?" 2 hours later, sitting in a small cafe in Notting Hill, Eleanor embraced Carmen Rodriguez, a dark-skinned woman with grey hair and perceptive eyes that reflected the 30 years she had spent analyzing medications as head of the hospital pharmacy. "My dear, it's been so long. But what happened? You look distraught," Carmen observed, studying her friend's face. Eleanor looked at Rita, who had sat at another table to give them privacy, but keeping watch over her, less by Valerie's order and more out of genuine concern. "Carmen, I'm in trouble. I think they're drugging me." Over the next 30 minutes, Eleanor recounted everything. Her arrival at the mansion, Valerie's behavior, the strange tea, the locket that disappeared and was then found, the false accusations of mental confusion, and most importantly, the mysterious capsules. She took from her bag the small package with the vitamin she hadn't taken. "I managed to save one. Can you analyze it?" Carmen carefully took the capsule. "I can ask a friend at the university lab. It'll take a few days, but we'll find out what's inside." "What about the tea? Is there anything I can do?" "Save a sample. Boil water in a separate kettle. Swap the cups when no one is looking. Observe patterns. Who prepares it, how it's served, if everyone drinks the same thing." Eleanor nodded, absorbing the instructions. "Carmen, the strangest thing is how my son has changed. Liam was always determined, sometimes even stubborn. Now, near Valerie, he seems domesticated. Perhaps it's not just you who's being manipulated," Carmen pondered. "You said she also serves him tea every night, right?" A shiver ran down Eleanor's spine. "Do you think she's drugging my son too?" "It's possible. There are substances that increase suggestibility, reduce critical capacity. We need to investigate that too." When she returned to the mansion, Eleanor found Valerie in the main living room, organizing details of the engagement party with a decorator. Her smile upon seeing her mother-in-law was the perfect mask of cordiality. "Mrs. Hayes, how was your walk? I hope you enjoyed getting to know our neighborhood." "It was very pleasant, dear. London truly is a wonderful city." Valerie gestured for Eleanor to sit down. "I'm finalizing the details of our party. I've set aside a special dress for you. Nothing too exuberant, of course. Something appropriate." The condescending tone did not go unnoticed, but Eleanor merely smiled. "How kind, Valerie. Can I help with anything?" "Oh, don't worry. You should rest. By the way, have you taken your vitamins today? Rita told me you left the bottle in your room." "I just took them," Eleanor lied. "They're really very good. I feel more energetic." A strange glint passed through Valerie's eyes, a mixture of satisfaction and something darker. "That's wonderful. Dr. Maxwell will be pleased to know. He'll be coming for dinner tomorrow, in fact. He wants to assess how you're adapting." That night, Eleanor implemented Carmen's suggested plan. When Rita came to bring the night tea, she asked for 2 cups, claiming she wanted to share with the housekeeper. As soon as she was alone, she transferred part of the liquid to a small bottle Carmen had given her and replaced it with hot water. When Valerie came to check if she had drunk the tea, she found the cup empty. "Did you sleep well, Mrs. Hayes?" Valerie asked the next morning, observing her intently during breakfast. "Wonderfully well, dear. Your tea works miracles." The subtle twitch in Valerie's eyebrow revealed her confusion. Clearly, she expected another effect. Eleanor maintained a serene expression while internally reinforcing her vigilance. Now, it was a war of wits. The young manipulator against the experienced older woman, who, despite her fragile appearance, had faced much greater difficulties in her life. In the following days, Eleanor established a routine. She pretended to take the vitamins and tea, but discreetly discarded both. She began to act as if she were increasingly confused, carefully staged small lapses, repeated questions, objects forgotten in obvious places, all to make Valerie believe her plan was working. Meanwhile, she observed, she noticed how Valerie always prepared Liam's tea personally, never allowing the staff to do it. She noticed her son's behavior pattern. More lucid and assertive in the morning, gradually more passive and impressionable as the day progressed, especially after the night tea. On the 4th night since her meeting with Carmen, Eleanor waited for everyone to retire and then silently left her room. She went to the kitchen where she knew Valerie kept her special mixtures in a small locked pantry. Rita had confided to her that only Valerie had the key. Not even the cook could access that space. With a skill that would surprise anyone who underestimated her due to her age, Eleanor used a hairpin to force the simple lock. Inside the pantry, she found a meticulously organized collection of bottles, herbs, and small packets. Each was labeled only with initials and dates. On an upper shelf, a black-covered notebook caught her attention. Valerie's diary. With a pounding heart, Eleanor leafed through the pages. The elegant handwriting documented not only infusion recipes, but also detailed clinical observations. LH, dose increased by 15%. Effects, increased suggestibility, mild morning confusion, intensified emotional dependence. In another entry, EH protocol initiated. Estimate for complete confusion, 3 weeks. Hospitalization planned before the wedding party. Eleanor's blood ran cold as she understood the extent of the plan. It wasn't just about removing her, but about completely destroying her credibility and autonomy before she could pose any threat to Valerie's plans. And as for Liam, he was being systematically manipulated to become a puppet in his fiancée's hands. A noise in the corridor made her quickly put the notebook away. She closed the pantry door and hid behind a large industrial refrigerator. It was just one of the house cats, but the scare was enough to remind her of the danger she was in. Back in her room, Eleanor barely slept. The next morning, she received a call from Carmen. "Eleanor, we managed to analyze the capsule." Carmen's voice was tense. "It's a dangerous mixture, a high-dose antipsychotic, combined with a sedative and traces of substances that affect short-term memory. Whoever is giving you this wants to make you disoriented, lethargic, and confused." "I knew it," Eleanor murmured, feeling a mixture of vindication and horror. "This is criminal, Eleanor. We need to report it. I don't have enough proof yet, Carmen, and who would believe me against her? I need to protect my son first." That afternoon, the promised Dr. Maxwell arrived for dinner. He was a middle-aged man, with perfectly trimmed grey hair and a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. Eleanor recognized him immediately, not as a doctor, but from a photograph she had seen in Valerie's diary, identified only as ally. "Mrs. Hayes, what a pleasure to meet you personally," he said, shaking her hand. "Valerie told me about your situation." "What situation would that be, Doctor?" Eleanor asked, maintaining an innocent expression. The fake doctor exchanged a look with Valerie. "Oh, your adaptation to the new house. Changes can be stressful at your age." Dinner proceeded in a ballet of falsehoods. The supposed doctor asked seemingly casual questions, but clearly designed to test her cognition. Eleanor, alert to the game, alternated between perfectly lucid answers and moments of strategic confusion. She noticed how Liam watched the interaction with growing concern. "Mother, are you feeling well?" he asked when she forgot the name of the main dish for the third time. "I'm fine, son, just a little tired." After dessert, while having coffee in the living room, Dr. Maxwell made his move. "Liam, based on what I've observed and Valerie's reports, I believe your mother could benefit from a more comprehensive evaluation. I know an excellent clinic in the Surrey Hills." "What kind of evaluation, Doctor?" Eleanor interrupted, with a clarity that surprised Valerie. "Just routine cognitive tests, madam, preventive." "That's an excellent idea," Valerie quickly intervened. "We could schedule it for after the engagement party. It would be more discreet." Liam seemed divided. "I don't know, Mother, what do you think?" Before Eleanor could answer, the doorbell rang. Rita announced an unexpected visitor, Carmen. "Excuse the intrusion," she said, entering the room with the confidence of someone who knows exactly what she's doing. "Eleanor called me earlier, worried about some strange symptoms she's been experiencing after she started taking some vitamins. As a retired pharmacist, I was curious." Valerie's face paled, while Dr. Maxwell nervously adjusted his tie. "And who might you be, madam?" Valerie asked, regaining her composure. "Carmen Rodriguez, former head of pharmacy at St. Francis Hospital in Canterbury and currently a consultant for the toxicology department at Imperial College London," she replied, extending a professional card. "Liam, my dear, it's been so long. The last time I saw you, you were graduating from high school." The confrontation was just beginning, and Eleanor felt for the first time since she arrived in that house that the tide was beginning to turn in her favor. Carmen's unexpected presence created a palpable tension in the room. Liam, visibly surprised, stood up to greet her. "Mrs. Rodriguez? Wow, it's been so long. You haven't changed a bit," he said, genuinely happy to see a familiar face from his childhood. "How you have changed, my son. You're a grown man, an important one. Your mother must be very proud," Carmen replied, casting a meaningful glance at Eleanor. Valerie quickly took control of the situation. "What a pleasant visit, but we were in the middle of a private medical consultation. Perhaps we could receive you another time." "Medical?" Carmen raised an eyebrow, studying Dr. Maxwell. "You are—" "Dr. Augustus Maxwell, neurologist and geriatrician," he introduced himself, extending his hand with studied confidence. "I'm assisting Mrs. Hayes with her adaptation." Carmen shook the offered hand, but her gaze remained evaluative. "Interesting. Which hospital do you practice at, sir?" "I have a private practice in Chelsea and consult for various clinics," he replied vaguely. "And you? You said you're a pharmacist?" "Retired, but I still keep my contacts at the university. You know how it is, old habits." Carmen smiled, sitting comfortably on the sofa as if she had been formally invited. "Eleanor called me concerned about some side effects from the vitamins she's been taking. Dizziness, confusion, memory lapses. Very specific symptoms, don't you think?" The fake doctor and Valerie exchanged quick glances. Liam, observing the interaction, seemed increasingly intrigued. "What vitamins are these, Mother?" "Valerie only told me they were supplements for your age." Before Eleanor could answer, Valerie intervened. "They're vitamin complexes prescribed by Dr. Maxwell, darling. Completely safe." "Then you wouldn't mind showing me the formula, would you, Doctor?" Carmen asked with an innocent smile. "As a pharmacist, I've always been interested in new formulations." "I'm afraid it's a proprietary formula, madam," the doctor replied, with a tense smile. "Developed specifically for patients with conditions like Mrs. Hayes's." "And what condition would that be exactly?" Carmen insisted. "Eleanor has always had iron health. We worked together for decades at the hospital and she rarely got sick." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Liam looked from Valerie to the doctor, then to his mother and Carmen, as if trying to fit together pieces of a puzzle. "I think we're all tired," Valerie finally said, standing up. "It's been a long day. Dr. Maxwell, thank you for your visit. Liam, why don't you escort the doctor to the door while I show Mrs. Rodriguez the back exit?" The veiled insult did not go unnoticed. Carmen smiled, unperturbed. "Don't worry, I know the way well. In fact, I was hoping to spend a few minutes alone with my old friend. Ladies' matters, you understand." Liam, seemingly oblivious to the rising tension, nodded. "Of course. Make yourselves at home. I'll see Dr. Maxwell out, and then I have some documents to review in the office." As soon as the men left, Valerie abandoned all pretense of cordiality. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but I suggest you don't meddle in matters that don't concern you." "Eleanor's matters have concerned me since we were young nurses in Canterbury, young lady," Carmen retorted, undeterred. "And I doubt your doctor has any real credentials." Eleanor, who had until then observed the confrontation in silence, finally spoke. "Valerie, I know what you're doing. I found your diary in the pantry. I know about the mixtures you prepare for me and for Liam." For a very brief moment, Valerie's perfect face twisted into an expression of pure hatred. But soon the mask of control returned, accompanied by a cold smile. "I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Hayes. I think you really are confused. Perhaps we should expedite your admission to the clinic." "Admission?" Carmen intervened. "No one is going to admit anyone without a legitimate medical evaluation and Eleanor's own consent." Valerie crossed her arms, assessing the two women before her. "Do you really think you can stand up to me? I built all of this." She gestured to the mansion around them. "Liam was just a promising engineer when I met him. I'm the one who transformed him into the CEO he is today, who connected him with the right investors, who planned every move of his ascent." "Manipulating him with your potions?" Eleanor asked, keeping her voice calm despite the anger she felt. "Drugging my son to control his decisions?" A dangerous glint passed through Valerie's eyes. "Call it what you will. I call it strategy. Men like Liam need guidance, a little chemical adjustment to make them more receptive, more malleable. It's no different from what they do with executives in corporate retreats, just more efficient. And what about me? What's the plan? To make me seem senile, to keep me away from Liam?" Valerie laughed, a melodious and cruel sound. "At first, yes, but you proved more resilient than I expected. Now I see I'll need more definitive measures." The implicit threat hung in the air. Carmen stepped forward, positioning herself protectively beside Eleanor. "Be careful with your words, young lady. Threatening an elderly woman in the presence of witnesses is not a smart move." "Witnesses?" Valerie scoffed. "It will be the word of two confused old women against mine. The adorable fiancée of the powerful Liam Hayes, known for her philanthropic work and social connections. Who do you think people will believe?" At that moment, Carmen's phone beeped. She checked it and smiled. "People tend to believe scientific evidence, Ms. Monroe. The university lab has just completed the analysis of those vitamins you've been giving Eleanor. A fascinating cocktail of controlled drugs you formulated there." Valerie's face visibly paled. "That's ridiculous. You have no way of proving those capsules came from me." "We don't need to prove that," Eleanor replied calmly, taking a small object from her pocket, a voice recorder. "You just admitted that you chemically manipulate Liam and that you have more definitive plans for me. That, combined with the substance analyses, is already enough for a serious investigation." For a moment, Valerie seemed genuinely shaken. Her calculating gaze assessed the recorder, then the two women, as if weighing all available options. "Impressive," she finally said, regaining her composure. "Clearly I underestimated you, Mrs. Hayes, but know that I am not easily defeated." She walked to the door, stopping only to add, "And I suggest you don't show this recording to Liam yet. He is under the effect of very delicate substances. An emotional shock could be dangerous for his heart." With those words, she left, leaving the two women in a silence heavy with concern. "Is she bluffing about Liam's heart?" Carmen asked, as soon as they were sure Valerie was far away. "I don't know," Eleanor replied, slowly sitting on the sofa, feeling the weight of the situation. "But I can't risk it. I need to find out exactly what she's been giving my son before confronting him with the truth." That night, after Carmen left, Promising to return the next day with specialized help, Eleanor waited for everyone to retire and then stealthily went to the master bedroom. She knew Valerie usually worked late in her private office on the other side of the mansion. Liam, in turn, usually fell asleep early after drinking his medicinal tea. The room was in semi-darkness, illuminated only by the faint light of the bedside lamp. Liam was sleeping deeply, his normally tense face now relaxed in an almost childlike sleep. Beside the bed, on the bedside table, was the half-empty teacup. Carefully, Eleanor collected a sample in a small bottle Carmen had given her. As she was about to leave, she noticed something on the table on the other side of the bed, Valerie's side, a fine leather folder with the monogram VM engraved in gold. Moved by an impulse, Eleanor opened it and found documents that made her blood run cold. Extensive powers of attorney giving Valerie almost total control over Liam's businesses, will drafts, property transfer documents. "My God," she whispered, quickly photographing some pages with the phone Carmen had insisted she use. "This is much bigger than I imagined." A noise in the corridor made her quickly close the folder and hide behind the heavy curtains. The door opened and Valerie entered, followed by a man Eleanor recognized as Liam's private driver. "Is he completely sedated?" the man asked, looking at the sleeping figure on the bed. "As always, nothing would wake him until tomorrow," Valerie replied, checking Liam's pulse with clinical indifference. "Now listen, Paul. Change of plans. We need to move everything up. The old woman is smarter than she seemed, and she's brought reinforcements. What do you want me to do? After the engagement party, I want you to take Mrs. Hayes for a ride," Valerie said, making air quotes. "I know people in the East End who can keep her comfortable until we resolve the situation permanently. Meanwhile, I'll have Liam sign the final documents. He's almost at the right point of suggestibility." The driver seemed hesitant. "This is kidnapping, Valerie. It's different from just helping with your special remedies, and you think you have a choice at this point." Valerie's tone was icy. "We've been in this together from the start. If I fall, you fall with me." Hidden behind the curtains, Eleanor could barely breathe. The plan was more sinister than she had imagined. It wasn't just about removing her or controlling Liam. Valerie planned something much more definitive for both of them. When she finally managed to return to her room hours later, Eleanor felt both terrified and strangely calm. Fear gave way to determination. Her son was in danger, and she was perhaps the only person who could save him. The next morning, upon entering the dining room for coffee, Eleanor found Valerie on the phone, apparently finalizing the last details of the engagement party that was to take place in 2 days. "Good morning, Valerie," Eleanor greeted, with a tranquility that surprised herself. The young woman hung up the phone and smiled, the perfect image of the busy and happy fiancé. Nothing in her behavior indicated the sinister conversation of the previous night. "Mrs. Hayes, did you sleep well? You look refreshed today." "I've never slept better," Eleanor replied, pouring herself coffee. "By the way, I wanted to thank you." Valerie frowned, confused. "Thank me? For what?" Eleanor smiled, a small and enigmatic smile. "For teaching me that sometimes we need to fight with the weapons we have." A flicker of uneasiness crossed Valerie's perfect face, quickly replaced by her practiced smile. She didn't realize that, while they were talking, Eleanor had skillfully swapped their coffee cups. The war was just beginning, and now both were playing to win. The morning of the day before the engagement party brought an atmosphere of apparent tranquility to the Kensington Gardens mansion. The house buzzed with activity, as decorators, florists, and catering teams prepared everything for the grand event. Valerie supervised every detail with military precision, while Liam spent the day in business meetings, oblivious to the true dramas unfolding under his roof. Eleanor observed everything from her balcony, seemingly frail in her rocking chair. Since swapping cups with Valerie at breakfast the day before, she had noticed a subtle change in the young woman's behavior, a slight disorientation, small hesitations amidst her usual tasks. The coffee Eleanor had served contained a small dose of the same tea Valerie prepared for her every night, not enough to cause harm, just enough to give the manipulator a taste of her own poison. "Shouldn't you be getting ready?" Rita's voice interrupted her thoughts. "The hairdresser will be here in an hour." "Yes, dear, I'm coming," Eleanor replied, slowly getting up. "Rita, how long have you worked for this family?" Almost 10 years, Mrs. Hayes. I've been here since Mr. Liam bought this house. And Valerie, when did she appear? Rita hesitated, looking around as if fearing to be overheard. About 2 years ago. At first, she was just one of the master's many friends. But she soon became special. It all happened very quickly, to tell you the truth. Quickly how? The housekeeper lowered her voice even further. Mr. Liam had just ended a long relationship with Dr. Lucy, a doctor we all adored. They were almost engaged when suddenly everything ended. A week later, Miss Valerie was already settled here, and the strangest thing— She hesitated again. You can tell me, Rita. Trust me. The master changed. Before he was cheerful, talked to all of us, went out with friends. After she arrived, he became more reserved, almost controlled, as if he was afraid of doing something wrong. Eleanor nodded. The puzzle gained more pieces. Rita, I need your help. It's about Liam, about protecting him. Half an hour later, Eleanor found herself in Valerie's room, apparently waiting for the hairdresser who had been directed there by mistake. In reality, it had been a carefully planned distraction with Rita's help. While waiting, her experienced eyes scanned the environment. Valerie's room was a study in calculated luxury. Unlike the rest of the house, decorated by a professional to display discreet wealth, this space seemed straight out of a celebrity magazine, excessively opulent, almost vulgar in its ostentation. A huge dressing table covered with very expensive beauty products occupied an entire wall. Beside it, a closet larger than Eleanor's room displayed rows of designer clothes still with tags. But it wasn't these extravagances that caught Eleanor's attention. It was the small desk in the corner, locked with a key that fortunately Valerie had left in the dressing table drawer, hidden under silk scarves. With skillful fingers, Eleanor opened the desk and found a document box. Inside, meticulously organized folders revealed a disturbing history. Valerie Monroe had not always been Valerie Monroe. She found certificates with different names, all with the same photo. Veronica Matthews, Valentina Mitchell, Victoria Mason, multiple identities, multiple lives. In each folder, photos and newspaper clippings documented relationships with rich and powerful men. An unsettling pattern emerged. Valerie approached influential men, usually recently out of relationships or facing moments of vulnerability. Within a few months, she became indispensable. Soon after, the men began to exhibit erratic behavior, inexplicable health problems, questionable financial decisions. Most alarming, in all the stories, Valerie walked away with fortunes in powers of attorney, transfers, jewelry and properties, always legally, always leaving no criminal traces. The men were ruined, financially and psychologically, but no formal accusation ever reached her. My God, Eleanor murmured, quickly photographing the most important documents with her phone, as Carmen had instructed her. She's a professional predator. One folder in particular captured her attention. It contained information about Lucy Miller, Liam's ex-girlfriend. Apparently, the doctor had begun to suspect Valerie and planned to warn Liam. Before she could do so, she suffered a car accident that left her hospitalized for weeks. When she recovered, Liam was already completely under Valerie's influence and refused to see her. Eleanor felt a chill. Although there was no direct evidence that Valerie caused the accident, the coincidence was too disturbing to ignore. The sound of footsteps in the corridor made her quickly put everything back in place. Seconds later, the door opened and Valerie entered, looking slightly surprised to find her mother-in-law there. Mrs. Hayes, what are you doing in my room? Rita told me the hairdresser would be waiting for me here, Eleanor replied, with the perfect innocence of someone with decades of experience in dealing with difficult people. I must have misunderstood. Valerie narrowed her eyes, scanning the room for signs of intrusion. Finding nothing obvious, she forced a smile. The hairdresser is in the beauty salon downstairs. Come, I'll accompany you. As they walked down the corridor, Eleanor noticed that Valerie walked with slightly unsteady steps, a subtle effect of the small doses of her own remedy that Eleanor had been secretly administering in her breakfast coffee. Are you feeling well, dear? You look a little pale. I'm fine, Valerie replied dryly. Just tired with the party preparations. Ah, yes, the party. It will be a memorable event, I'm sure. The double meaning did not go unnoticed. For an instant, the two women stared at each other. The young predator and the experienced survivor, each assessing the other's strength and determination. Later that day, while getting ready for the rehearsal dinner that would precede the engagement party, Eleanor received a phone call from Carmen. "I managed to speak with Lucy," her friend said without preamble. She confirmed everything. She began to suspect when Liam suddenly changed his behavior. As a doctor, she recognized signs of chemical manipulation. When she confronted Valerie, she suffered the accident. Does she have proof? Not conclusive, but she's willing to help us. She'll be at dinner tonight. What do you mean? Eleanor almost dropped the phone. Valerie would never invite her. She didn't invite her. But Lucy's brother is a partner of one of Liam's biggest investors and received an invitation to bring a +1. She'll come as his guest. A plan began to form in Eleanor's mind. This could work, Carmen, but we need to be extremely careful. Valerie is dangerous and cornered. That's when she'll be most lethal. Do you have the photos of the documents? Yes, I sent them to your email as you taught me. I also have the recordings and the tea samples. But we still need definitive proof of Liam's manipulation, something he can't ignore, even under her influence. I have an idea, Carmen said, but it's risky. I'll need access to the kitchen tonight. The rehearsal dinner gathered about 50 people, a preview of the extravagant party that would take place the next day for 200 guests. Powerful businessmen, socialites, and politicians circulated through the garden illuminated with hundreds of Venetian lanterns. Liam, impeccable in his Italian suit, seemed strangely disconnected, smiling automatically and answering questions with rehearsed phrases. Beside him, Valerie shone in a red dress that cost the equivalent of a luxury car. Eleanor, dressed in a discreet navy blue outfit chosen by Rita, ignoring the aged beige dress Valerie had set aside, remained seated at a table in the corner, seemingly frail and a little confused, the perfect image of the senile elderly woman her future daughter-in-law tried to project. It was when Lucy Miller entered the garden that the atmosphere changed. Tall, with glowing dark skin and a presence that commanded attention, the doctor immediately drew all eyes, including Liam's. For a brief moment, something seemed to awaken in his eyes, a recognition, a flash of uncontaminated memory. Valerie noticed the change instantly. With quick movements, she approached Liam and placed a champagne flute in his hand, champagne that Eleanor knew contained an extra dose of her special sedative. "Drink, darling. You seem tense," Valerie instructed with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, now fixed on Lucy. Eleanor observed Carmen, discreetly positioned near the buffet, talking to Rita. A small nod confirmed that the plan was underway. While Valerie was distracted by the unwelcome arrival, Rita replaced her champagne flute with another, seemingly identical, but free of any substance. During dinner, seated between two important executives who completely ignored her, Eleanor watched the situation unfold. Liam, after drinking the adulterated champagne, seemed increasingly lethargic and impressionable. Valerie, on the other hand, was drinking clean champagne for the first time in months, without the protection of her own potions that normally kept her alert while everyone around her became susceptible. As the night advanced, an unexpected phenomenon began to occur. Liam, though still visibly under influence, seemed to be increasingly drawn to the table where Lucy was seated. Several times, Valerie had to redirect him, her irritation growing with each interval. The decisive moment came when Liam stood up to make a toast. His words began as obviously rehearsed, thanking everyone for their presence and announcing his happiness for the engagement. But then, something changed. His gaze wandered around the room and fixed on Lucy. I wanted to... He hesitated, suddenly seeming confused. "I feel like there's something I should remember." Valerie immediately stood up, placing a possessive hand on his arm. "Darling, you're tired. Perhaps we should conclude the toast." "No," he said, surprisingly firm. "Something is wrong. I've felt it for weeks, but I can never remember what." He looked directly at Lucy, an expression of painful recognition on his face. "Why did you stop calling me? Why did you disappear from my life?" A murmur rippled through the room. Valerie, realizing she was losing control of the situation, tried one last desperate tactic. "Liam, you're not well. It must be that heart condition of yours acting up again." "I don't have a heart condition," he replied, increasingly confused. "I never did." It was at that moment that Eleanor stood up, her staged fragility giving way to an inner strength that surprised everyone. "My son," she said with a clear and firm voice, "I think it's time we talked about what's really happening in this house." All heads turned to the elderly woman, who until then many had dismissed as irrelevant. Valerie, feeling control completely slip away, shot Eleanor a look of pure hatred. "Don't listen to her, Liam," Valerie hissed. "Remember what Dr. Maxwell said about her mental state." "How about we ask Dr. Lucy about my mental state?" Eleanor replied calmly, pointing to the doctor. "Or about the substances you've been putting in my son's tea every night." The room fell into absolute silence. Liam looked from his mother to Valerie, then to Lucy, as if slowly emerging from a long nightmare. The impeccably planned party had turned into the scene of a confrontation no one expected, except the two women who, for opposing reasons, had spent weeks preparing for this exact moment. The silence that fell over the room was dense, almost palpable. 50 guests, all important figures in London society, watched the scene with a mixture of shock and morbid fascination. Valerie was the first to regain her composure, forcing a melodious laugh. "Liam, darling, your mother is clearly having another one of her episodes. Perhaps it's best if we take her to rest." But Liam remained motionless, his gaze alternating between his mother and Lucy. A fog seemed to slowly dissipate from his mind, years of chemical conditioning beginning to give way. "Lucy," he finally said, his voice hoarse and uncertain, "why are you here? Valerie told me you had moved abroad." After ending everything, the doctor took a step forward, her presence commanding immediate respect. "I never broke up with you, Liam. I never left the UK. I tried to contact you countless times after my accident, but you refused to see me or answer my calls." "Accident?" Liam frowned, confused. "Valerie told me you had accepted a job in London, that you left a letter ending everything." "That's absurd!" Valerie exclaimed, shooting a furious look at Lucy. "Are you going to believe this woman who appears out of nowhere after 2 years just to cause trouble at our celebration?" Eleanor, who had patiently awaited her moment, walked to the center of the room with a dignity that silenced everyone again. "My son," she said gently, "since I arrived in this house, I have been the victim of a systematic campaign to make me appear confused and mentally unstable. But I am not the only victim here." She turned to the guests. "I apologize for turning this celebration into something less festive, but lives are at stake, including my son's." Carmen approached, carrying a small briefcase. "Excuse me, I'm Carmen Rodriguez, a retired pharmacist and toxicologist. I analyzed samples of the tea that Valerie Monroe, if that is indeed her name, regularly serves Liam and Mrs. Hayes." A murmur ran through the room. Valerie took a step towards the door, only to find Rita and 2 other household staff discreetly blocking the exit. "This is defamation," Valerie protested, her beautiful face contorted in barely contained fury. "You have no proof of anything." "Actually, we do," Eleanor replied calmly, taking her phone from her pocket. "I have here photographs of your diaries detailing the special mixtures you prepare. I have recordings of you admitting that you chemically manipulate my son. And more importantly," she paused, looking directly at Valerie, "I have documents showing that you've done this before, with other men under different names." Valerie's face visibly paled. Her eyes, normally cold and calculating, now revealed something close to panic. "This is madness. Liam, you're not going to believe these lies, are you? After everything we've built together?" Liam seemed increasingly lucid, as if each exchanged word freed him a little more from the chemical fog that had enveloped his mind for so long. "What exactly were you putting in my tea every night, Valerie?" he asked, his voice gaining firmness. "It's just a calming tea, to help you relax after work." "A calming tea does not contain benzodiazepines in controlled doses, nor compounds that increase suggestibility," Carmen intervened, opening her briefcase to show the laboratory results. "Nor does it cause chemical and psychological dependence when administered continuously for months." Lucy approached Liam, maintaining a respectful distance. "I began to suspect when I noticed changes in your behavior shortly after she moved in here. As a doctor, I recognized the signs: morning lethargy, impaired memory, increased suggestibility, personality changes." When she confronted me, Valerie interrupted, her voice now laden with venom. She was invading my privacy, trying to defame me out of jealousy. That's why Liam broke up with her. I never broke up with Lucy, Liam said slowly, as if testing the truth of those words. At least I don't remember breaking up. Because you didn't break up, Eleanor confirmed. Valerie fabricated that whole story, just as she fabricated the idea that I was becoming senile, just as she fabricated her other identities over the years to deceive other men. One of the guests, an elderly gentleman who had been observing the scene with growing interest, suddenly stood up. "Valentina," he said, approaching to get a better look at Valerie's face. "My God, it's you. Valentina Mitchell. You disappeared after emptying my cousin Edward's accounts." Another guest, a well-known lawyer, also spoke up. "I recognize her too, but as Veronica Matthews, I represented a client who lost everything to this woman 3 years ago." The net was closing. Valerie, realizing her elaborate facade was crumbling, adopted a new tactic. "All right," she said, surprisingly calm. "Let's suppose I helped Liam make certain decisions. Where's the crime? He signed every document voluntarily. Every transfer, every power of attorney, all legally perfect. You can check with any lawyer present. Using drugs to manipulate him. That invalidates any consent," Lucy argued. "Prove it," Valerie challenged, crossing her arms. "Prove he was under the influence of substances when he signed the documents. Any lawyer will tell you it's almost impossible to establish that retroactively." It was true, and all the legal professionals in the room knew it. Proving that someone was chemically manipulated at the exact moment of signing documents months later was extremely difficult. It was then that Paul, the driver, stepped forward. Until then he had remained discreetly near the entrance, observing everything. "I have proof," he said, his voice trembling but determined. "I recorded several signing sessions at her request, supposedly as security, in case anyone questioned the legitimacy of the documents. In the recordings you can clearly see Mr. Liam's altered state." Valerie turned to the driver, her eyes flashing with hatred. "You traitor, after everything I did for you." "After turning me into an accomplice, you mean," Paul retorted. "I only drove the car that caused Dr. Lucy's accident because you blackmailed me. But kidnapping and false imprisonment, that's too much." A shocked murmur ran through the room. Liam looked at Valerie as if seeing her for the first time. "You planned Lucy's accident?" he asked, horrified. Valerie, realizing her situation was untenable, abandoned all pretense. Her beautiful face transformed into a mask of disdain and arrogance. "She was in my way, just like your country bumpkin mother is now." She turned to Eleanor with a cruel smile. "Do you really think you've won, old woman? Do you think your precious little son will just come running back to your arms now? Look at him, a weakling who needed to be drugged to function in the world of the powerful." "Enough, Valerie." Liam's voice thundered through the room, surprising everyone. For the first time in years there was fire in his eyes, a determination that not even the residual effect of the drugs could suppress. "It's over. Get out of my house." "Your house?" She laughed, a cold metallic sound. "Check the documents, darling. This house, as well as 60% of your companies, are in my name now. Technically, I'm the one who should be kicking you out." Before the situation escalated further, 2 men in discreet suits appeared at the entrance of the room. They were Metropolitan Police detectives, discreetly called by Carmen hours earlier. "Valerie Monroe," one of them said, approaching. "Or whatever your real name is, we need you to accompany us to provide clarification on multiple charges: fraud, identity theft, attempted grievous bodily harm, non-consensual administration of controlled substances." The list continued, but Valerie no longer listened. Her eyes frantically calculated escape routes. With a sudden movement, she grabbed a champagne bottle from a nearby table and smashed it, holding the shattered neck like an improvised weapon. "No one is taking me anywhere," she declared, backing towards one of the side doors. "I spent years building this perfect scam. Years. You have no idea what I had to do, the disgusting rich old men I had to endure to get here." The situation was tense. Guests retreated, forming a semicircle. The police officers advanced slowly, hands on their weapons but hesitant due to the presence of civilians. It was then that Eleanor, to everyone's surprise, walked calmly towards Valerie. "Dear," she said with surprising tranquility, "there's still an honorable way out. Cooperate with the authorities. Your case will certainly attract competent lawyers given your notoriety." "Stay away from me, old woman," Valerie screamed, brandishing the broken glass. "You're the one who ruined everything. I should have sent you to that asylum in the first week." Eleanor continued to advance slowly. "You are young, intelligent. Even with a conviction, you'll have a life ahead of you. Don't turn fraud into something worse." For a moment something flickered in Valerie's eyes, a realization that her situation was, in fact, irreversible. So many testimonies, so much evidence, so many previous victims emerging from the past. Lucy took advantage of this moment of hesitation to approach from the other side. "Valerie, I'm a doctor. I know you're not entirely lucid right now. The substances you use to control others have ended up affecting you too. Let me help you." Cornered between the unexpected compassion of her two main victims, something seemed to break inside Valerie. The shattered neck fell from her hand, and for the first time since Eleanor had known her, she saw something genuine on her face. Not manipulation, not calculation, but true defeat. "You don't understand," she murmured, as the police approached to detain her. "I just wanted what I deserve, what the world owes me." As Valerie was escorted out, a heavy silence fell over the room. The guests, still in shock, didn't know how to react to the dramatic revelation that had transformed an elegant celebration into a police operation. Liam, appearing simultaneously exhausted and awakened, approached his mother and hugged her tightly. "Mother," he whispered, his voice choked, "forgive me for not realizing, for doubting you." Eleanor stroked her son's hair as she had when he was little. "There was no way for you to know, my son. She was meticulous, patient, and she used weapons that no one could easily fight." Slowly the guests began to depart, murmuring among themselves about the scandal that would surely dominate the headlines the next day. Rita and the other staff, visibly relieved, began to dismantle the party decorations that never quite came to be. Lucy remained at a respectful distance, uncertain of her place in this new scenario. Liam, noticing her hesitation, extended his hand towards her. "We need to talk," he said simply. "There's so much I don't remember clearly, so much I need to understand." "There will be time," Lucy replied with a gentle smile. "First, we need to take care of you, completely detoxify your system." Carmen approached, putting an arm around Eleanor's shoulders. "You did it, my friend. You faced that viper and won." Eleanor smiled, exhausted but satisfied. "We did it, Carmen. All of us together." She looked at Rita, who was supervising the cleaning of the room, at Paul, who was giving his statement to the police, at Lucy, who was now talking softly with Liam. "It takes a community to unmask a predator." Later, when the mansion finally fell silent and the last police officers left with their evidence, Eleanor sat on her room's balcony, contemplating the stars over Kensington Gardens. London sparkled in the distance, beautiful and indifferent to the drama that had just unfolded in one of its most exclusive districts. Liam came to find her there, bringing 2 cups of tea, prepared by himself, with clearly visible commercial tea bags. "A toast to the end of special teas," he joked, trying to inject lightness into a night heavy with emotions. "I'll miss that house in Canterbury," Eleanor commented after a long, comfortable silence. "It was small, but it was ours, yours and mine and your father's." Liam held his mother's hand. "The detectives said they'll likely be able to annul most of the fraudulent transfers, as we have proof of chemical manipulation. But even if they can't—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Even if I lose everything, it doesn't matter. We can start over, in Canterbury if you wish." Eleanor smiled, squeezing her son's hand. "That won't be necessary, my son. What matters is that I got you back. The rest are just things." The next morning, the sunrise brought a new reality to the Kensington Gardens mansion. Liam's financial empire was compromised, his reputation tarnished, his heart confused between manipulated memories and rediscovered real feelings. But for the first time in years, he breathed the air of freedom, freedom to choose, to feel, to be truly himself. And by his side, firm as she had always been since his first day of life, was Eleanor, the mother who had crossed geographical and emotional distances to save him, not with physical strength or financial power, but with the most powerful weapon she knew: unconditional love and the wisdom of a lifetime. 3 months passed since the fateful night Valerie Monroe was unmasked and arrested. The Kensington Gardens mansion, once a symbol of opulence and coldness, had transformed. Heavy curtains were replaced by light fabrics that allowed natural light to enter. Formal environments gave way to more welcoming spaces, and the oppressive silence was broken by the sound of laughter and genuine conversations. Eleanor, wearing a simple but elegant outfit, was in the garden picking herbs for lunch when Rita approached. "Mrs. Hayes, the renovation crew has arrived to finalize the East Wing project." "Thank you, Rita. Tell them I'll be right there." The East Wing of the mansion, where Eleanor's old isolated room was located, was being transformed into a small rehabilitation clinic for victims of psychological abuse and chemical dependency. The idea had emerged from a conversation between Eleanor and Lucy, who now worked together on the project. As she walked through the property, Eleanor reflected on the dramatic changes of the past few months. Valerie's case had become one of the most talked about in the national media. Investigations revealed at least 8 previous victims, successful men who had been manipulated, drugged, and defrauded through schemes similar to what almost destroyed Liam. Under her true identity, Victoria Mason, daughter of a small-time con artist from rural Derbyshire, Valerie now awaited trial. The evidence was overwhelming. The detailed diaries, the toxicological analyses, the testimonies of previous victims, the confessions of accomplices like Paul, and, most devastating, the recordings she herself had made of Liam in a state of induced suggestibility signing documents. Her case had generated a national debate about a type of crime rarely discussed: chemical manipulation for purposes of psychological control and fraud. Experts in law, psychology, and medicine debated in major media outlets about how to identify, prevent, and adequately punish such crimes. In the mansion's main living room, Liam was talking with a team of lawyers. Gradually, he was regaining control over his businesses. Many of the transfers and powers of attorney signed during the period under chemical influence were judicially annulled, although some properties and investments remained inaccessible, tied up in complex legal disputes. "Mother," he called out when he saw Eleanor pass by, "come meet Dr. Miller. He will coordinate the medical team of our foundation." The Sebastian Hayes Foundation, named in honor of Liam's father, had been created to support victims of similar frauds and fund research into chemical and psychological manipulation. It was Liam's way of transforming his traumatic experience into something positive. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Hayes," said the doctor, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. "Your story has inspired many people to seek help, victims who previously remained silent out of shame or fear of not being believed." "The shame should be on the predators, never the victims," Eleanor replied, with the simple wisdom that characterized her. After the introductions, Liam accompanied his mother to the winter garden, a new space created especially for her to grow medicinal plants. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, noticing that he looked more rested. The detoxification process had been long and difficult. Weeks of withdrawal symptoms, mental confusion, memory lapses, and emotional instability. Lucy had supervised the treatment personally, with the dedication of someone who knew not only the doctor, but the person behind the patient. "Better every day," Liam replied. "Lucy says my tests are almost normal. The headaches have decreased and I'm able to sleep without medication." "And what about the memories?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, now slightly gray at the temples, a side effect of stress and treatment. "Still fragmented. It's like trying to put together a puzzle with missing pieces. I remember things from childhood with crystal clarity, but the last 2 years are a confused fog." "Give it time, son. The human brain is amazing in its capacity for healing." They walked in comfortable silence to the furthest part of the garden, where a small wooden bench had been installed under a cherry tree. It was Eleanor's favorite spot to meditate or simply enjoy the view of Richmond Park in the background. "I received a letter from Carmen today," she commented as they sat down. "She's excited about the international conference on pharmacological abuse that we're hosting next month." "She deserves all the recognition," Liam said. "Without her, without you, without Lucy." He left the sentence hanging, unable to contemplate the fate he would have suffered if Valerie's plan had succeeded. "We are stronger together, my son. We always have been." The sound of a car approaching interrupted the conversation. It was Lucy, returning from the hospital where she worked. In recent months, she and Liam had slowly rebuilt their relationship. It wasn't an immediate romantic reconciliation. Both knew they needed time to heal old wounds and build new foundations of trust. but there was a genuine companionship, strengthened by the shared experience of overcoming adversity. "I brought the results of the latest tests," she announced, approaching with a folder, "and good news from the university lab." Together, they reviewed the documents that confirmed Liam's physical recovery and discussed advances in research on specific antidotes for the substances used by Valerie. It was a joint project between Lucy's medical team and the toxicology department, where Carmen still maintained contacts. "This could help other victims," Lucy commented, clearly enthusiastic about the therapeutic possibilities. "We are detecting similar cases across the country. People who never imagined they were being drugged by their partners, family members, or even colleagues. It seems that unmasking Valerie opened Pandora's box," Liam observed. "Sometimes you have to expose the darkness to find the light," Eleanor said serenely. The afternoon was advancing when Paul, Liam's former driver, arrived at the mansion. After making a plea bargain, he had received a reduced sentence with the right to semi-open regime. He now worked at the foundation as a security consultant, using his experience to identify vulnerabilities that predators like Valerie could exploit. "I brought the new security cameras you asked for, sir," he said to Liam, still uncomfortable with the new dynamic of their relationship, "and also the investigation reports on the case in Manchester." While Liam and Paul discussed technical details, Eleanor and Lucy walked to the kitchen where Rita was preparing a fresh herbal tea. A new house tradition started as a way to positively re-signify the night tea experience. "How is he really doing?" Eleanor asked in a low voice, referring to her son. Lucy sighed. "Physically, almost recovered. Emotionally, there's still a long way to go. The trauma of manipulation, the shame of having been deceived, the anger at himself for not realizing it sooner." She hesitated. "And there's also the matter of feelings. He was chemically programmed to love Valerie. Deconstructing that is a painful process. And what about you two?" A slight blush tinged Lucy's cheeks. "We're rebuilding little by little, first as friends, then we'll see. He needs to rediscover who he truly is without any additional pressure." Eleanor nodded, understanding. True love has patience. Night was falling when everyone gathered for a simple dinner on the veranda. Rita had prepared a light feijoada, a dish Eleanor had taught the housekeeper, bringing a bit of Canterbury's flavor to sophisticated Kensington gardens. The table, once formal and intimidating, was now a space for communion. "I have an announcement to make," Liam said after everyone had served themselves. "I've decided to leave the property developer." Eleanor looked at her son with surprise. "Are you sure, son? You built that company from scratch. And it was almost destroyed by greed and manipulation. Besides," he hesitated, searching for the right words, "I'm not sure if that was always truly my dream or if it was the path I followed to prove something to someone." "And what will you do now?" Lucy asked. "I'm going to dedicate myself entirely to the foundation." And he smiled, for the first time in months with true joy in his eyes. "I'm going to resume an old project. Remember that sustainable housing complex we started planning before? Well, before all this happened?" Lucy smiled, clearly moved. "The project for vulnerable communities. Of course I remember. It was revolutionary. It was always my true passion. To build not just for the rich, but for those who truly need decent housing." He looked at his mother. "That's what Dad taught me, wasn't it? That a house isn't made of marble and gold, but of love and respect." Eleanor felt tears in her eyes. "Your father would be very proud, Liam." "I am." The conversation flowed naturally, touching on past memories, future plans, and reflections on lessons learned. There was a new lightness in the air, as if the mansion could finally breathe after years suffocated by lies and manipulations. Later, when everyone had retired, Eleanor remained on the veranda contemplating the moon that illuminated the garden. She took from her pocket the old gold locket with Sebastian's photo, the same one Valerie had hidden months ago in her first attempt at manipulation. "We did it, Sebastian," she whispered, caressing the cold metal. "We saved our boy." A soft breeze rustled the leaves of the trees, as if in a silent answer. Eleanor smiled, feeling a peace she hadn't experienced in a long time. The journey had been arduous, full of dangers and pain, but also of profound discoveries about the strength of family love, the importance of community, and the power of truth. The next morning, as the sun rose over London, Eleanor prepared for a new day. There was so much to do, supervise the clinic's renovations, work in the medicinal herb garden, help organize the international conference, and most importantly, continue to be a safe haven for her recovering son. Life had taught her that the most dangerous predators don't always have visible claws, that the most lethal poisons can come in beautiful packaging, and that the greatest battles are often fought in silence, away from public view. But it had also taught her that true love, the kind that protects without suffocating, that strengthens without dominating, is the most powerful weapon against any form of manipulation. As she watered her plants, Eleanor watched Liam and Lucy chatting animatedly about the plans for the housing complex. There was still a long way to go, scars that would need time to heal completely, memories to rebuild. But for the first time since she set foot in that mansion, she felt that she was no longer in enemy territory. She was home. And this home, unlike the one Valerie had built, was founded not on lies and manipulation, but on truth, respect, and genuine love. The sunlight finally reached all corners of the garden, dispelling the last shadows of the night. A new day had begun, a day of new beginnings. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Eleanor and Liam's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about the strength of family love and overcoming adversity. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this narrative of resilience and hope, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of human relationships and the transformative power of true love. Don't miss our next content and share your own experiences in the comments. After all, as Eleanor discovered, we are stronger when we are together.